The league owner meetings have wrapped up in Phoenix, Arizona, and we heard from both general manager Darren Mougey and head coach Aaron Glenn. We did not, however, hear from owner Woody Johnson, probably a good thing. We break down everything from their media availability. It's the DTereman Football Show, and it starts right now.
Not only have to understand how to win, but to understand how to consistently win.
What is going on, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the DTereman Football Show. I am your host, DT, coming to you on this Wednesday afternoon. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Also consider entering our Curtis Martin mini helmet raffle giveaway as we approach the 2,000 subscriber mark. Thank you all so much for helping me achieve that milestone so quickly. And as a thank you, I want to raffle off the Curtis Martin mini helmet for one of you guys. So how to enter is a $5 super chatter up. $5 is one entry, 10 is two, and etc. That will get you onto the wheel of names that we will spin once we hit 2,000 subscribers. Also, gifted memberships, one membership gifted equals one entry onto the wheel. So certainly appreciate everybody who has already entered. And to get in, just $5 super chats will get you one entry. So the big topic this week has been the owners' meetings. General manager Darren Mougey and head coach Aaron Glenn both spoke in Phoenix, both to the media, and then they had a separate exclusive one-on-one with Jets social media team member Eric Allen. So kind of curated all of the sound bites, all of the quotes from all four individual press conferences and kind of jam them all together. I want to go over general manager Darren Mougey's presser first because I feel like there was a lot less substance in the Mougey interviews, both with the beat writers and with Eric Allen. Not saying that his interviews were bad, right? You can still gain some knowledge and some insight based on what he said in those availabilities, but it was a lot less insightful, in my opinion, at least, than what Aaron Glenn said. And of course, as always, I mean, this is kind of known at this point, especially with the Jets specifically. It always seems like the general managers say one or two sentences too few to the media. And that's a great thing, right? Be more guarded, like hold your cards close to your chest. Don't let them know all your secrets. So Mougey does say about one or two sentences too few to the media and leaves you hanging like, okay, was there more that we could have extracted from that? And it's basically just a bunch of nothing burgers. Whereas on the inverse, Aaron Glenn usually says one or two sentences, maybe too many. And then you get those weird headlines like the superpowers of play calling and Gino's going to lead us to the promised land. We're not going to talk about those things, although they've made the rounds, right? We all know that that is the most important part of the 40-minute interview with Aaron Glenn is the fact that he said Gino's going to lead us to the promised land. So it always seems like the head coach says one or two sentences too many, but the GM says one or two too few. So general manager Darren Mougey spoke to the media and Eric Allen. He talked about free agency. He said they were pretty busy with an emphasis on adding veteran leadership. And I apologize if you guys can hear the landscapers outside. He said last week they went on the road to a bunch of pro days and workouts, but now they're going to go back to New Jersey after the owners' meetings and start putting together their draft big boards. So basically Thursday and Friday of this week, so tomorrow and Friday, they're going to get together, have their meetings, and then all of the scouts are going to come in on Sunday for a meeting. And then Monday, they'll be in full-blown draft meeting mode where all they will talk about is the prospects and lining up their big boards accordingly. And it's basically a detailed process throughout building the board, he said. He was very vague and general with the idea of their big board. but it basically stems from the fact that they don't have it in place yet. Whereas guys like me who have been studying the draft since September and October, I know how I feel about these guys. I've seen them. I've done the work. I've done the evaluations, not saying I'm better or ahead of the Jets, but these processes for teams work so much differently from guys that are constantly studying the draft week in and week out. Yes, Mougey was there. He was at a lot of the college games for a lot of these big-time quarterbacks, even Oregon's Dante Moore, who ended up going back to school. But they're not putting their big boards together until this upcoming weekend and mainly starting next Monday after they get the scouts in on Sunday. So their draft big boards have not even begun to form yet, and that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. So that was their emphasis, was hitting free agency hard, adding veteran leadership. They were one of the youngest teams in the league, and they targeted a few of those guys, and obviously they acquired a couple of them, Onyemata, Demario Davis, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and so on. When he was asked about Geno Smith, he said they evaluated Geno Smith entering the 2025 season, and they said that he came away with good grades based on their grading sheet, and that they had people in the building, which at that time was quarterback coach Charles London, who were familiar with him, and they thought he was a good fit for what they were doing then, but now they just feel like he's a good fit still going into 2026 on what they want to do going forward. The wide receiver room quote was probably the most GM or coach speak quote of all. He said he likes the room. He wants to see Garrett get back healthy, excited to see the growth and development steps of AD, Isaiah, and Arian Smith, but they're also not going to stop looking for what he called competition or depth at the room. So you're talking about trades, street free agents, draft possible options. They're not going to stop adding to the wide receiver room. So I thought it was a bit of a coach speak answer to say he likes the room as it's currently constructed. But of course, I mean, that's what he has to say. He's the guy that brought in all those guys, so he obviously has to say he likes that room. But I don't think they're done adding to that room. Now, I mentioned trades as being possible for the wide receiver room. He was asked specifically about some trades, the Jermaine Johnson, the T'Vondre Sweat trade. He said, I feel good about the player. We are T'Vondre Sweat. It's wanted to do a run-stopping defense who are hard to acquire, he said. And they said they felt better about the edge market in free agency and the draft, which allowed them to be more flexible with moving Jermaine Johnson, who's on the last year of his fifth-year option in his rookie deal. They were going to have to come up with a new contract for JJ. He felt like it was a win for both parties, and I've kind of echoed those sentiments since the trade happened. The Jets were getting a scheme fit. The Titans are obviously getting a scheme fit with Saleh getting Jermaine Johnson again. And I think both teams are going to come away from that trade with better outlooks on the players they're getting than what the player they had in-house already was. So I think T'Vondre Sweat's going to do better than Jermaine would in this defense, but I also think Jermaine is going to do better than T'Vondre would in the Titans' current defense under Rob Saleh. So he did mention that trade specifically, but just on the overall topic of trades, he basically said it's another mechanism to build the roster, which I thought was a good word that he used there, a mechanism to build the roster. We're always going to exhaust all options or mechanisms in player acquisition. And he said the strategy talks as far as trading in the draft, that usually happens closer to the draft, whereas like teams might call about pick number 2, and those scenarios, they play through those scenarios internally, but they don't anticipate or receive those calls until closer to the draft. Once these teams have put together their big boards, stacked up their positions and say, hey, maybe we're not going to get that guy if we sit at whatever pick overall in the first round. Maybe we have to move up, and the Jets could be one of those teams. So he's always going to answer the phone. Ongoing conversations happen basically daily between him and other general managers, it seems. So as teams build out their boards, the Jets are going to be receiving more calls, probably for 2, maybe for 16 overall, certainly for 33 overall. I think they're going to get a ton of calls about that pick specifically. So he just wants to use that as another mechanism, and it's a mechanism that he's used to his advantage, right? I believe it's 11 or 12 trades since becoming the general manager of this team. So I do think having that in his back pocket as asset to his general manager abilities, I think that bodes well for the Jets having so many picks in this class. Now, talking about the quarterbacks that they viewed on the pro day circuit, which they just came off of last week, he said they mentioned Miami, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas Tech, and Alabama. So basically a school per day, Monday through Friday. He said it was great to get exposure and information on the prospects. He spent a ton of time with AG, Frank Reich, and Bill Musgrave, the quarterback's coach, and he said it was a really fun week getting to know them, both football and outside of football conversations, of course. So it was nice to see that, top four of AG, Mougey, Reich, and Musgrave on the road together, really collaborating about the quarterbacks that they're going to be deciding whether they want to draft in this class or not. And that just goes way outside of Ty Simpson, right? Carson Beck with Miami, obviously CJ Carr from Notre Dame, and Julian Sayin of Ohio State are next year's class. And then Texas Tech, also their quarterback, I believe, is probably a UDFA this year if he's out in this class. But they have a decision to make on guys like Drew Aller as well from Penn State, who they hosted on a private workout. So getting all four of those brains together and working on finding the quarterback that they all agree with, I think is really important in a week like this where they're not in the building. They have a little bit more relaxed and downtime maybe when they're traveling and stuff like that, where they get to have these conversations and pick each other's brain about the quality of quarterbacks and the traits in quarterbacks that they like. And then going a little bit deeper on Reich and Musgrave specifically, he said he feels really good about the coaches they have in that room with Gino. He said it's been great talking quarterback with them, and that Bill Musgrave is really into the draft process, which I don't know if that's necessarily a surprising thing, but Bill Musgrave being, up there in age, I believe he's like mid-50s or early 60s, to be so heavily involved in the draft process as a quarterback coach, of course he's going to be the guy that has to take on the quarterback and help develop and mentor him in the NFL. But it's nice to see, your positional coaches are very hands-on with the draft, and they're excited about having an opinion on these guys before they get drafted to the Jets. And then he was asked, because I think this is such an important conversation on the outside of the building in terms of football, fans specifically love to talk about next year's class, right? The 2027 class is supposed to be loaded, and not just from a quarterback position, right? There's non-quarterbacks that are going to be, I don't want to call them generational, but people will start talking about next year's class and some of those prospects as potentially generational players. And they're going to get way ahead of their skis. And those way too early mock drafts are going to probably have 8 or 9 quarterbacks in the first round. It's really just a name association at this point. They want to talk about just names that could be first round picks. It's a long way away. But when Darren Mougey was asked about looking ahead to 2027, he said, of course, those discussions happen, but we're focused on the work that needs to be done now. And there's plenty of work that needs to be done now. And he said the landscape always changes, so it's too much of a major projection to think 1 year removed. Now, of course, like he said, those discussions happen. If you really don't like a specific position group in this class, we'll just say running backs. But next year's class, you already like 3, 4, 5 of the running backs that you viewed while watching this year's class. Maybe you're going to lean a little bit more towards next year just because there's more options for you. But to say they can just look at 2027, who cares about 2026, I feel like is just the wrong way to go about the draft process. So I'm glad that he mentioned that. A couple of player-specific things with Mougey before we get into Glenn. He was asked about the Breece Hall contract, and he said he will shift focus back to the Breece contract after the draft, and he hopes to get a long-term deal done. He said everything about Breece, and AG kind of echoed this sentiment as well. Breece is bought in. It seems like he really wants to be here. Now, fans can speculate and say, oh, that's absolute crap. I don't think Breece Hall, he's a malcontent. He doesn't want to be here. Any chance he gets, he's going to bail and jump ship and not be a part of the Jets anymore. Maybe internally they're getting very different messages from Breece Hall. So I would like to see a long-term deal get done. And if it happens right after the draft, like that first or second weekend in May, I wouldn't be surprised. And that's well before the July 15th deadline to sign and get a deal done on that franchise tag number. And then the second player he talked about right at the end was Will McDonald. and the 5th-year option. And he said there have not been any solidified true talks about contract with Will or his agent, obviously, but he anticipates picking it up. And I believe the number is somewhere between 14 to 14.5 million. That is an extremely solid number for what you think is your best pure pass rusher on the roster. And Will McDonald, one of your, designated pass rusher types who's going to come in and pin their ears back in third down situations. Anytime the Jets have a lead, I feel like Will McDonald is going to be heavily used in that defensive front. So at a 14.5 million figure for 1 year of Will McDonald, and it's not even his 2026 price tag, that's his 2027 price tag, because he still has year 4 before the 5th-year option. So they anticipate picking that up. That's probably somewhere between top 20 to 25 at the position. I think you can argue that Will McDonald is probably better than top 20 at the position based on production and ability and traits. I think he's probably closer to 15. So to get him at a cheaper discount at 14.5 million, I think is a really easy no-brainer decision for Darren Mougey, despite adding to the edge room with Osai and Egbare, probably a pick at 2 overall as well. So that was Darren Mougey talking with Eric Allen and The Beat. Now let's get to Aaron Glenn. This one was, I think, the longest single interview Aaron Glenn has done with the media. It was almost 38 or 39 minutes long on the Jets social media page. So highly advise everybody to check it out and listen for yourself. I have a couple of quotes that I want to talk about, and then I have, I believe, 4 or 5 AG clips that I think are really important when he talks about certain positions and the team building process. One of the first things that I thought stuck out to me was he was asked where the NFL is going. He said it was really good to talk to other head coaches in the league and learn the nuances of the NFL, and not just nuances of like being a head coach, but nuances of like what the league is trying to improve on and how that affects the coaches' roles and responsibilities. And one of the things he brought up was AI. And of course, AI is sweeping the globe, and everybody needs AI to function at work. And if we don't have AI, how are we ever going to do our jobs? I thought what AG said was really intriguing, because he himself said the AI portion of this is very intriguing. But he said it's something we can take advantage of as a staff, and we have some very innovative young guys who can help teach it. And then he talked about Seth Ryan and Thomas Merkel, who were brought in this year to the staff. And he said that these guys are 2 young guys who can really help implement this to some of the older coaches. Obviously, Aaron Glenn himself is between, I think he's 54 or 55 years old. And then Reich and Musgrave are even older than Aaron Glenn is. So you have a bit of an old guard at the top of your coaching staff. And then you have the younger side, which is the Seth Ryans, the Thomas Merkels, and things like that. Even like Duker and Slowick are relatively young for their positions. So I thought it was intriguing. He did mention that, this is a very different thing for the NFL to like take on. It's very new. And of course, it's something that they have to adjust and adapt with over time. Somebody jokingly asked him if he was going to, use it to call plays. Like, what do I do on this third down situation on defense? He's like, I'm going to trust myself over the AI. So I thought that was a good one, because could you imagine Aaron Glenn has a situation in a game where he calls defense, but he's using ChatGPT, and then he goes into the podium and is asked about it later, and he brings up using AI on a third down situation, like a crucial third down situation. I could just see AG just getting absolutely plastered in the media by saying something about AI, and he used it when everybody would be like, why wouldn't you just use your brain, AG, and use your superpower of calling plays? So I'm glad that AG is leaning into the AI stuff. I don't want him calling plays using AI. Like, that's just Ask Madden, right? On Xbox or PlayStation 5 or whatever we play these days now. So I'm glad that AG is going to call plays using human technology and use AI to help the information input and output side of football. So I did like that AI quote, especially because, like I said, he's probably above the average age of the, NFL head coach at 55 years old. So I do think there is some new elements that he can implement into his coaching style. Now, talking more about Geno Smith, and this was a big conversation with Mougey, obviously. He said himself, Mougey, and everyone involved took time to decide what guys fit the Jets. He called Geno highly competitive with a chip on his shoulder, really loves football, has learned from his mistakes, and it will be a key component of getting everyone on the same page. Pretty much night and day from what you expected from Justin Fields. When we got Justin Fields last year, it was like, oh, the Jets are going to lean into this really run-heavy, super specific offensive scheme, and Justin Fields is going to help unlock some of that because of his dual threat abilities. Now the kind of shifted conversation of Geno Smith is now we have an adult in the room. He can make all the throws. The arm strength is certainly still there. He's matured throughout his career, right? He's 36 years old, so he's been in the league far long enough to learn from his mistakes that he made with his time with the Jets in the beginning of his career, of course. So I did like that a lot of those things. He mentioned synergy between him and Geno Smith because they both have a chip on their shoulder. I think that's really important when the head coach and quarterback are on the same page. Now, of course, you can point to last year, and it was a lot of the same similar comments about Justin Fields, the chip on his shoulder. He hasn't been coached right. But this is a little bit different, in my opinion, because of how old Geno is and all the experiences that he brings with him. He mentioned getting players at the line of scrimmage into the right play. I don't know if Justin Fields was ever able to do that for the New York Jets last year. So just that alone, that adult impact is going to be huge with Geno added to the room. He did say that the foundation of the offense is set. Now, they are not done adding to the offense, of course, but he said 4 of the 5 offensive line starters are back. All of your running backs, your tight ends, your wide receivers are back. And he said, so now we can be multidimensional, something they were not last year. They were 7th in rushing and 32nd in passing. And they got to that 32nd mark in week 6. They bottomed out in week 6 and carried it on for the next 12 weeks of the season. So I anticipate a little bit more balance. I still think the offensive running attack can be top 10 and probably should be top 10 considering the continuity you have there. And then if your passing offense goes from 32nd to 21st, right? That's a huge jump. And there's playoff teams in that range of 20. We did the exercise with the Los Angeles Chargers, and they were 20th last year in offense. And it was all passing production difference from the Jets. The Jets were lockstep with the Chargers in terms of rushing output. It was mainly just the passing output. And obviously Justin Herbert's a better quarterback than Justin Fields, but can Geno be somewhere in the middle, leaning more towards Justin Herbert than Justin Fields in terms of production? I certainly think so. And if you average out Geno's last 4 years, he's the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback in Jets history. So you add an adult to the room with continuity. You have the old guard and the new guard of coaches coming together. And I really feel like you have a semblance of a NFL offense. Of course, things have to get, you have to hit the ground running and everything has to come together right. And it actually has to translate onto the field. But I think it's a good first step to really turning around this offense, which was just completely brutal to watch at times last year. Speaking of Geno with the downfield passing, he mentioned, and I don't really like when AG does this, but he mentioned how going up against Geno Smith when he was a defensive coordinator and when he was also with New Orleans, he mentioned that he was extremely tough, smart, able to take command, get in and out of the huddle, set the protections, all of those things. So he didn't necessarily go as far like when he did with Justin Fields. And it was like, oh my gosh, he was brutal to game plan against. And it was so hard going up against those Bears teams with Justin on them. This time it was a little different, although the base of the comment was rooted in when we played against him as when I was the defensive coordinator. So I don't really like the start of that comment, but he ends it well by talking about all the other things Geno does well in terms of getting in and out of plays, setting protections, getting players into the right plays. And I think that's so much more important than having a guy like Justin Fields who is just a fun element of an offense when he's healthy and able to run the ball. Now, enough about quarterback on offense. He was asked about the quarterbacks on the defensive side of the ball, namely Demario Davis and Minkah Fitzpatrick. He said, our goal was to get an influx of veterans. That was the intentional part of their offseason. He said, those guys we brought in, adding veterans who will keep us sustainable. And he said, it's a big man's game, and these players have to fit the way we want to play defense. He talks about Sweat being a good run defender and a sneaky pass rush, pushing the pocket player up the middle. Said similar things about Onyemata. Kingsley and Osai are very versatile, and we have a quote about those two players specifically. And then Demario, he said, can do things that fit what we want to do schematically, going to be whatever they need to be in order for the Jets to be successful, which means they're understanding the message. They know what it is that AG is not selling or pitching to them. He understands these guys are veterans. This is what we need in our room to help bring the guys like Jamie and Sherwood, the Malachi Moores, the Azareé Thomases, the Juwan Briggs of the world, even the Will McDonalds of the world. We need these veterans like Onyemata, Osai, Demario, Minkah to help bring those guys along, because if players 35 to 53 on the roster don't really understand the messaging from AG, one, the messaging probably isn't great, but two, he doesn't have guys in that locker room when the coaches aren't around to trickle down that message. Rob Saleh called them flag bearers, and I used to make fun of that quote when he first said it a couple years back. But thinking more about it, having players like that is so important to your room, like the Quan Alexanders of the Robert Saleh regime. Guys like that who understand what the coach wants to do, can get the idea from the coach, bring it to the players, and translate it in a way that helps bring everybody's game along. So I did like that he was adding players on the defensive side that he views as quarterbacks or veteran leaders, because being the second youngest team on paper in the NFL is great. You have a ton of upside. But if those guys aren't hitting that upside, it's going to be problematic. Last one, or two more before we get to the quotes. He was asked 3-4 versus 4-3 fronts. He said, quote, we will be a multiple defense, elements of 4-3 or 3-4, but you are in nickel 70% of the time, so 4 down spacing. He says, I love front variations, 4 or 5-man fronts with a lot of movement. So hand up, I was certainly responsible for this when it happened, but when AG first took over play calling and we understood that he was going to be the guy, I went a little too far with it's got to be a 3-4, and only guys that fit a 3-4 have to be the person that you acquire on this team. In certain positions, sure, you can lean heavily 4-3, like a Tavondre Sweat type. Now, hearing him say this and understanding, it is always going to be a multiple league. Nobody sits in base 3-4 3 plays in a row, right? You might get one play of base 3-4, but then you're probably going to a 4-2-5 or a 3-3-5, depending on how you want to run it. So him saying he wants to have multiple front variation with a lot of movement, that to me says, okay, we want versatile pieces. We want guys who do multiple things, even at an okay level. If you have a guy who has a solid floor as a pass rusher, but a little bit more upside as a run defender, namely like a Kingsley and Egbare, I think that's sound roster building for a multiple front, not necessarily hammering yourself into one specific front, and now you have guys that aren't really going to fit on certain situations. Maybe Tavondre Sweat is the only one, and then maybe a Will McDonald type would be the two where it's like, okay, maybe they're like very situational, but I do think that it's important to get guys that are versatile, and we'll talk about two specifically, but they definitely are versatile on this defensive front. Now, he was asked about his self-reflection, because at the end of season press conference, he talked about self-reflection and taking a couple weeks to understand the things that transpired throughout his first season as head coach. And a lot of people will say, oh, self-reflection, let's go fix all the bad things. Of course, you want to fix all the bad things. But he started the quote by saying it's not solely harping on the negatives. He said sometimes it's just about doing things differently. And he mentioned efficiency in practice and focusing on player recovery post-practice, which are things that a lot of us fans don't really think about in that coaching process. And then he talked about game management, which I thought was huge because that's one of my biggest issues and a lot of people's biggest issues with Aaron Glenn is the game management, the timeout usage. And he said, especially now that he's calling the defense, he wants to be able to at least take advantage of things on offense. And that's why Reich is here. He mentioned being in a defensive meeting and he knows that Brian Duker understands his system. So Glenn can install the terminology and whatever they're talking about that day. And then Duker can come in and fill out the rest of that meeting while AG takes a second to go to the offense and learn a little bit about what Frank Reich is teaching the offensive side of the ball. So Glenn can still be hands-on with the offense thanks to Duker having a familiarity, whereas maybe a Wink Martindale, he'd have to be more hands-on with the defense and it'd be maybe a clash of messaging or terminology or things like that. So he did talk about that. And I do think it is really important that he focuses on the offense still, despite being a defensive coach and a defensive play caller, because he is the head coach and you can't only focus on one side of the ball. So I did like that he talked about specific things like that, but the efficiency in practice to me was probably the biggest one in terms of I wasn't thinking about that element of it. And those are things that when you're a head coach, you get thrown into the building and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't think about these 8 different variables that come into a regular Tuesday in the office. So I did like that he talked about that self-reflection period and that it wasn't necessarily based on negativity. And there was a lot of positivity as well in there. Now, in terms of the quotes that Aaron Glenn gave, the first one he was asked about was Arvell Reese and some of the traits that they look for in an edge rush player. So we'll play that clip first.
Look at something. I think you hit it on the head. The first thing is, man, the traits, arm length, weight, speed, ankle flexion, like all those things that you're trying to look at. And then, like, the coach that can actually coach him to get to that next level. And then does he have the football character to allow himself to be able to be coached, to be able to do those things? Like, all those things, like, has to be evaluated when you're looking at a guy like that. Who was it? I think it was Daniil Hunter. His stats wasn't up there, but he had all the traits. Yeah. And then you had a coach that can coach him to be where he's at right now. So I look at it the same way of, man, it's a combination of the traits and it's a combination of the football character. Again, is that player coachable enough to be able to do the things that you want him to do to be successful?
So I like that he comped Arvell Reese to Daniil Hunter, not from a schematic perspective, but from he didn't have production at the highest level of college. Like, it wasn't the 14.5 sacks like David Bailey had, but getting him into the NFL, getting him around the right head coach, around the right positional coaches has certainly helped flourish Daniil Hunter into what he is today. When you look at Arvell Reese specifically, sure, he's probably not the bendiest, right? I've used the term bendgate on Twitter multiple times this offseason. It's kind of getting ridiculous that we're talking about bend and ankle flexion on a bag drill with these edge rushers. But I did think it was important that he mentioned that because it's not always about production. And I think edge rushers specifically, it's really tough to say he didn't get sacks in college. He's never going to get sacks at the NFL level. There are so many different variables that come into edge rusher in terms of role and responsibility. What are they being asked to do down in and down out? I think that changes. And with Arvell Reese, you have to have a guy who's physical and who can set the edge. And that is one of his calling cards, is his strength. It's literally one of his biggest assets is how strong he is at 246, 248 pounds. The length that he plays with, again, he's not going to beat a tackle on the outside shoulder. He's going to just run through his chest. And they have, in my opinion, the coaches who can help develop that plan along with an Arvell Reese. Obviously, AG is going to be involved with Duker, but Carl Dunbar, the defensive line coach, and even Ben Bowling, the linebackers coach coming over from Houston. Houston had one of the most ridiculous linebacker rooms last year with I believe it was Toa Toa and Al Shazier. So it's, to me, if you get an edge rusher like Arvell Reese at 2, I don't think he's that much of a projection. And every player to a degree is a projection in the draft. Of course, you've never seen him play at the NFL level on a Sunday, but it's not as gray area as I think a lot of people want to make it out to be, where it's like, we know exactly what David Bailey is. We know exactly what Ruben Bain's going to be, but what the hell is Arvell Reese going to be? I think there's a case that Arvell Reese has a safer floor than David Bailey, because to me, if David Bailey can't get to the quarterback, right, in 2.5, 2.7 seconds, and you're playing against the team, like hypothetically, the Miami Dolphins of last year, that Mike McDaniel's offense where it was quick drops, one step sometimes, and throw the ball, it doesn't matter how quickly you get after the quarterback, you're not going to reach him. And Joe Blewett did a really good job of going back to Will McDonald's 2025 season and showing all the reps where Will McDonald won nearly immediately, like instant wins on the offensive line, and he couldn't get anywhere near the quarterback because they were throwing it because the coverage was either bad on the back end or they had a concept that was open against our coverage. So you can have a really fast first step explosive edge rusher. Doesn't necessarily mean anything if he can't actually get his hands on the quarterback. So David Bailey is a fine pick, and I won't be, upset if the Jets go in that direction. I just think a guy like Arvell Reese, who is going to be an elite off-ball linebacker at worst, in my opinion. He can spy the quarterback very well. Like if you want a guy who can, remember the Jermaine Johnson sack back when Jermaine wore 52 his rookie year when he beat Josh Allen to the edge. Allen rolled out to his right on like a crucial second or third down in a tight ball game. And Jermaine Johnson made that shoestring tackle on Josh Allen and got us off the field. That's the type of plays that Arvell Reese can make for this defense, and he can do it standing up as an edge or as the off-ball linebacker standing next to Demario Davis. So to me, I think it's really important that you emphasize the coaching and the developmental plan for Arvell Reese, but I don't think in any way, shape, or form Arvell Reese is a bad selection for the Jets at 2 overall. Now, the next quote we have here is talking about evaluating quarterbacks and AG from a cornerback perspective, how he views the quarterbacks and all the different angles that he sees these prospects through.
That's a good question because I look at it from like different angles. And one, if I'm a defensive player, like how would I defend him? What are the issues that we feel like he'll have? And then we try to put him through drills. So, for example, we had one of our coaches, when one of the quarterbacks dropped back, man, I want to attack him and see how he can maneuver in the pocket to be able to get himself free to be able to deliver the ball. So those are things that defensively, I want to see him do that. Offensively, just all the little small details of the drop, 3-step, 5-step, under center, play action, ball handling, like all those things that you want to look at as an offensive coach now to see if he fits what we're trying to do. So you're right, I look at it from both angles.
So I really like that quote for a couple of reasons. Obviously, when you have a guy like Darren Mougey, a former quarterback at the college level, Frank Reich, quarterback at the NFL level, Musgrave, a ton of quarterbacking experience, sometimes you need that, like, not devil's advocate, but like against the grain view from Aaron Glenn, like, hey, I'm lining up on the other side of these guys. These are the tells and the tendencies, and these are the situations where, okay, when he has to run to escape pressure out of the pocket, but he has to run to his left as a right-handed quarterback. These are what the key focus points are as a defensive player and how we can combat and work against that quarterback. So I do think it's really cool to get that perspective from AG. And then he talks about certain perspectives from an offensive side that you want to see the quarterback hit on. And that's the 3 to 5 step drops, the playing from under center, the play action, the ball handling, right? Can he get the snap from the center? I think a lot of college guys struggle with that out the gates, is getting the snap from the center because they're so used to a shotgun based offense in college. So looking at it from all those different key points, I think is really cool. And I like the defensive perspective from the head coach there on that one. This one is a quote about Kingsley Enagbare and Joseph Asai, as well as Will McDonald. So basically the edge rushers currently on the roster and the potential and the versatility of those three players.
6'5", 270. When you look at the defenses that I've been on from New Orleans to Detroit to now, man, he fits exactly, and I call him a rush, which is really a defensive end. From Cam Jordan to Hutch, like, he fits that mold of that type. Now, totally different players, but as far as what we're trying to build to make sure that we have a guy on the edge that can really set it and they be able to rush with power. All right, so he was one of them. Outside, he can do a lot of different things. He can play the rush. He can play the Sam. He can drop into coverage. He's played special teams quite a bit. He's disruptive. I mean, he had like 5 or 6 sacks, like I think the last 2 years. So we can utilize him in a number of different spots. And I think that's the best thing about where we're at right now. So we have a number of guys that we can maneuver and move around to be able to do some things. I mean, Will right now, I can't wait to see what the things that we're going to do with. You guys can't wait to see what we're going to do with Will. So it's exciting right now to have those guys. And we have like that many weapons on defense to be able to do some things.
Now, I thought that last part about Will McDonald, and he's excited to see what Will can do. And then he was like, wait, you guys are excited to see what Will can do. I'm surprised people didn't run with that. Like, oh my God, AG doesn't know what the plan is for Will McDonald. But you can kind of start to see what they're prioritizing in their edge room, and that's versatility. They want a guy who can set the edge physically against the run, who can also play the pass, and that to me leads way more into the Arvell Reese pick. And if you're looking for a guy who is going to give you versatility, right? QB spy, run defense, cracking down on the end man line of scrimmage and holding up at the point of attack, redirecting routes, the run path for the running back, things of that nature, I think is really important for the Arvell Reese pick. And it kind of sheds some insight that they want versatile edge players. So to me, that would say Arvell Reese over David Bailey. But again, I wouldn't be mad at either selection, obviously. I think adding an edge at 2 is the way that they should go. Now, this next quote is about Minkah Fitzpatrick and his leadership and his influence on the rest of the roster for this Jets defense.
It's the reason why he's here, because of his influence. And I told him my definition of leadership is really influence, and that's what he brings to the table. You can go back to New Orleans when Marcus Williams, the things that he's done, then going to Detroit with Kirby and BB, the things that he's done, man, he knows that, and he sees that within the defense that we're going to run, and he's excited about that. So being able to use him at nickel, being able to use him at safety, being able to use him at dime, those are a number of different spots you can put him in and watch him be successful. And then it's hard to ID him when you're able to do that as an offense.
So again, going on the main topic of versatility, right? Versatility at the edge room, versatility on the back end with their safeties. We already think Malachi Moore is a bit of a versatile piece. He can play the single high post. He can come down into the box and play strong. He can play the nickel or the overhang defender as well. I think he's a bit more versatile entering his second year. But then you hear about Minkah Fitzpatrick. You could play him in the nickel. You could play him as a safety. You could play him in the dime, which is usually 4 corners and 2 safeties, so a 6 defensive back look. Again, versatility is going to be the name of this. And if Aaron Glenn is, being honest, and I think he is with his fronts and variations and movement, versatile players are going to be so important. So even looking at a guy like Dylan DTereman at the safety position in the draft, and I understand maybe they don't go safety at 16, maybe they prioritize a DTereman over Emmanuel McNeil-Warren because there's a bit more of a sample size of DTereman being the single high post, the box safety, a little bit of nickel, and where I think EMW is more of like the box safety type. He's not necessarily a true rangy free safety type. So maybe they prioritize versatility there. So it's just little clues based on how they talk about these veteran players that I think is going to bleed into their thought processes in terms of stacking their draft board and finding out what works best for them. Last quote here from Aaron Glenn, and we did get a comment about this because I've seen that it has not made the rounds enough coming out of the Aaron Glenn press conference from yesterday, and that is, how often does he think about getting this team over the hump and back to a contender and a perennial playoff team?
Every day. There's a couple things I think about on a daily basis. Number one, I think about the players every day. And I think about, and I really, really think about this. Now, this is not just coach speak of, how do I utilize every player that we have on this roster to help us be successful? And then two, what are the things that I have to do to make sure that, man, we get over that hump? Because I've been a part of it, and there's no better feeling in the world than, okay, so we were downtrodden for a number of years. And then we finally get over that hump. And now we're moving. But then again, so now how do we keep that sustainable for years to come? I want to leave a legacy. I do. When I'm gone, man, I'm looking at this team being a team that consistently puts themselves in a place to win. But every day, it's not a day, it's not an hour, not a minute. I don't think about that. And I look forward to trying to make that happen. I really do.
I don't know what to say, guys. As a Jets fan, all of the coaches, all of the players, all of the executive general managers, front office members that have come through this building and probably didn't give a shit about this team before they got here and failed and have gone on and or may not be in new spots around the league. How do you not want to root for this guy? This, to me, is the easiest quote to get behind with Aaron Glenn. And the fact that he wants this team to succeed so fucking badly that he is getting choked up in the middle of a March presser when asked about this, I get it. Last year sucked. It sucked ass. We were not good. And of course, 3 wins is one of the hardest things to overcome. And all of the pressure mounting on you going into year 2 is going to be there, amplified, of course. Why are we trying to run this guy out of the building? He's the only one that wants to fucking be here. Fans don't even want to be here. We got fans jumping off ship. And AG's like, nah, man, I'm 10 toes down with this organization. I can't wait to get over that hump and build a sustainable perennial contender. And maybe it doesn't happen, right? And I don't think the betting favorite would be for AG to be the guy to turn the Jets around. That's completely a fair take to have. I don't know how you don't get fired up about that. And I know it's the middle of March or the end of March, now the beginning of April, and we haven't gone through the draft process and we're so far away from the season, but I don't get it. I don't get where you could be mad at AG for this. And maybe people aren't mad about this quote specifically, but I think he's gotten an exceptionally unfair amount of hate for just how bad this team was last year. Yes, a lot of it falls on him and the decisions that he made or decisions that he didn't make last year in terms of how far was that field goal. And it was 68 yards when it was really 62 yards and all bad things. But I can't get behind AG and this quote any more than I am now. And like I said, maybe he doesn't turn out to be the best head coach in Jets history, but to me, this had me fired up. I paused the podcast. I wrote everything out. I quoted the clip, and I just sat there fired up. I was like, this isn't exactly what you want your coach to say. No other coach in the league right now, not even Mike Vrabel, who I wanted as the coach, would say that about this team because he was not here. He didn't understand what it was like to be dog shit with this team and see a semblance of success at the middle portion of his career, like Aaron Glenn did under Parcells, and then he went on and I believe he went to Houston. So it's just, we can harp on the stupid promised land quote, and maybe the promised land for the Jets is a 7 to 8 win season because we can't get over that hump before even talking about the playoffs. I wanted to end on this quote, and it was the last quote of the presser, so I was going chronologically, but man, this fired me the hell up, and I cannot wait to see Aaron Glenn have a chance to turn it around. I think it would have been completely unfair to one and done him, despite the terrible things that happened last year. To me, he was the 31st or 32nd best head coach last year. Pete Carroll was probably the only one who did a worse job. And a lot of that comes from hiring your son to be the offensive line coach, and you have offensive line and running back meetings with your general manager instead of your son, who is the O-line coach. But Aaron Glenn wasn't good last year, but he knows damn well that he's going to turn it around, or has every opportunity to turn it around in year 2. And I think year 3 is not guaranteed by any stretch. And he admitted they have a long way to go. But man, this fired me the hell up. So with that, I will turn it over to you guys in the chat. I see a lot of you guys in the room, 82 of you guys, 54 on YouTube. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. I was trying to star a couple of these comments as they came in. I will go with the super chats and the gifted memberships first. I saw you, Jets Johnny. Don't worry, I saw you. Appreciate you, bro. He gave me $5 super chat. He says, let me borrow that helmet real quick. Hey, man, it's right here. I got it right here, waiting to go. I would be more than happy to send this to you, Jets Johnny. If you win it on the wheel, thank you so much for entering our giveaway contest. We had a new member of the A1 Since Day One community, JT420. I appreciate you, JT. I'm pretty sure you're the same JT that I go back and forth with on Twitter quite a bit, so I appreciate you becoming a member of the community. Our favorite Patriots fan, I don't know if that's true or not, but 6 rings, $2.80 Canadian. I appreciate you. He says, Gino leads you to promised land. Don't let go of the rope. Yeah, I mean, whatever, man. Appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, the Aaron Glenn makes great headlines and content when he says funny things like that. I really don't care about it. Give me the football insight in those quotes, and I'll talk about those instead. Nobody believed him when he said Gino was leading us to the promised land, by the way. And it got way more circulation of headlines than it probably needed to. Our favorite 1.4% member, and I say that because I was able to meet her in person, and there's another member of the 1.4% in here as well, Janice Jet, gifting 5 memberships to the A1 Since Day One community. Thank you so much, Janet and Janice, and you are in the raffle for 5 more. And then you followed it up with another chat here that says, my pleasure, Dylan, way behind schedule these days. Happy belated birthday and all of the best on your upcoming move. Hope it goes smoothly for you. Thank you so much, Janice. I really appreciate it. I wish we had a little bit more time to talk in Tampa Bay. I know I wasn't in the most sober state. I don't know if you were either, but it was really great to meet you and talk to you down in Tampa. Everything's going well with the move so far, as you see. There's nothing on the background here behind me in my old apartment. But Friday, I signed the papers. I get to start moving my stuff in. And then Saturday, I get the U-Haul truck. So very excited to get this move underway. And thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. We had one more here. One of my other favorites in the 1.4%, Leanie in North Carolina. She gifted 1 membership to the A1 Since Day One community. The Asmaniac Cinderella story continues for Queen Leanie on an absolute tear in the bracket, going from a play-in to upsetting the 1 seed in Beast Breaker. I mean, you're just on a roll, Leanie. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you and Mr. Leanie, I love that everybody calls him that. I hope you guys are doing well. All right. Other non-super chat questions I saw in here. We got Carly in the chat. Go Jets. I appreciate that, Carly. Veteran Jets fan. This is that last clip was for you, brother. He says, not many people mentioning Aaron Glenn almost crying at the end of the presser. He has been a horrible head coach in every respect, but I hope he turns it around. It would mean so much to him. Yeah, and that's part of it, right? And we have to be fans at the end of the day. I call myself a fanalist. I'm a fan, but I'm an analyst, and there's times where you have to take off the hat and play one side of it. But the fan side came out of me completely when I heard that quote. And to watch a coach get choked up because of just how much it means to him, I think that should not be poo-pooed or laughed at. So I'm glad that you brought that up before I even had the clip ready to roll. VJF coming back in. He says, the cool thing about Glenn, Gino, and DeMario is that it feels like they really love the Jets. Like they are one of us, or three of us in this case. Yeah, no, 100%. I'm fully with this. A lot of times, and Jamal Adams too, when he left the team, he asked to leave, like emphatically celebrated, smoking a cigar backwards on Instagram Live because he was so fired up to get traded to Seattle. And then a couple years later, he's talking about depression and, wishing he never left the Jets. And I'm not saying that the Jets are this holier than thou organization where it's like, yeah, you leave, your career's fucked. Like, no, like these guys want to come back because it means so much to them. And I've said this before. Winning in New York is different than winning anywhere else. You are in the biggest market. You have all eyes on you, and they understand if they're the one that leads this team to said promised land, they will be idolized and, immortalized in New York and New Jersey forever. They know that. Jets Johnny, AG was objectively terrible at game management last year. 100%, dude. I can't disagree with this at all. Like there were multiple games. I know Denver was one. I believe Carolina was one even. There was one a little earlier on in the season where it was like Garrett Wilson's yelling at him on the sideline because he didn't understand what the plan was in that 2-minute warning situation, and they came away with 0 points. So that's one of my big issues with Glenn is game management. And then a tertiary improvement spot would be the way he conducts his podium pressers. And it seems like he's kind of changing in that regard. Yo Holmes says, recovery from practice, they don't even hit in practice anymore. Yeah, that's fair. But it is like you're out there in the heat, you're running around, like even minor things like hydration or things like that. Like we don't know exactly what that recovery is. It probably doesn't mean like recovery, like in the way of like rehabbing injuries and things like that. But it was interesting to hear him talk about like efficiency in practice and things like that, where he had to improve. Veteran Jets fan back again. He says, Glenn hired John Berger last year for clock management and replay challenges. He did. And if I'm not mistaken, I think AG went 3 for 4 or 3 for 3 on challenges. So they did a good job in that, area of game management and things. But yeah, he mentioned specifically me and Berger have to, talk about this more because he's going to be calling the defense. So hypothetically, there's a situation, the Jets offense is on the field after a kickoff. AG is talking to the front 7 on the bench, going over plays on the tablet. Frank Reich being the head coach of the offense at the time, you're really going to have to lean on John Berger and your game management coach in that capacity to like, hey, in this situation, this is how we're going to play it out. And I do think there's going to be some bumps in the road with AG trying to balance it all, of course. But yeah, he is going to lean on Berger quite a bit to help in that area. Retire 80 already. I believe this is Yeti. I don't want to get it wrong, but I believe it is. He said, glad I caught you. Thanks for streaming, Dylan. I appreciate you, man. I do agree with the name. Retire 80 already. They kind of have like pseudo retired 80. Nobody's worn it since, but you might as well just go ahead and outright retire it for sure. Billy says wide receiver at 2 is possible. I'm with it. I would take Tate or Lemon at 2 overall. I wouldn't take Tyson or Omar Cooper Jr., but I would take Tate or Lemon. Veteran says Danielle Hunter had 4.5 sacks in college, and Parsons only had 6.5 sacks in 2 college seasons. Yeah, those are, obviously like the extreme of like NFL talent, and maybe Arvell Reese doesn't hit that threshold, but it goes to show that college production doesn't one-to-one carry over to the NFL. You can have a highly productive player who doesn't have sacks in the NFL, and we'll see what comes of it with David Bailey and Arvell Reese. Like, I don't think David Bailey is like insert into your defense. Here's 10.5, 11.5 sacks. It could be a work in progress, maybe 5.5 in year 1. He gets up to 9 in year 2, and then he gets over 10 in year 3. I think that would be fine progression, but like just to assume you can drop a player in and get 10 sacks in a defense, I think is a little misguided. But those are good examples. You guys were making fun of Aaron Glenn in his AI comments, Yo Home says, ChatGPT, how far is that field goal? Hey, ChatGPT is not 100%, by the way, and they proved it. OpenAI is proving that ChatGPT will just agree with you more often than not. VJF, ChatGPT, should I throw a Hail Mary here? Probably not. But the Jets would do it anyway, and then Justin Fields would probably stand back there and take a 12-yard sack, and you don't even get a chance at a long field goal before half. So that's how that one would go last year at least. Shelter Vol 77. I believe this is a new name. I haven't seen you in the chat, so I appreciate you for tuning in. And he says, your Jets content is by far the best out there. Super impressive. Well, thank you, Shelter Vol. That's really generous of you to say. I would personally disagree with you. I think there's other guys out there that do a better job than me. I just it's for the love of the game at this point, my analysis. And that means a ton. Honestly, my first year having the YouTube channel really means a lot that, I don't think that of myself, but you guys out there might think that. I obviously think guys like Jake and Richie and Ian from Jet Central, Buffalo, Matt O'Leary, like we got a ways to go to catch up to those guys. But, I'm glad that I'm leaving a bit of an imprint on the community. So thank you so much for that. And if you are new to the channel, thanks for hanging out. Cuzzo, Philly Noodles with a $2 super chat. What's up, bro? He says, Tampa Tereman is my spirit animal. JETS Cuzzo. I have the picture of you and I. I'll have to find it. Maybe I can find it before we end the stream here. But I do have the photo of me and Philly Noodles in the Tampa meetup together. I remember it. So I remember going that far into the night, and that was, pretty late at night. You were with your girlfriend. I don't know if she's your girlfriend or your wife. I apologize. But yeah, you were there. I met both you guys. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for the $2. And then do what David does with the $2 super chat as well. He says $2 for the Capital One credit card bill. Go Jets. I'm surprised you guys remember that. Yeah, Capital One loves me. They love the amount of money that I owe them every month, but we make the payments on time. They always get their money, and then they keep giving me more. I don't understand it. They just keep handing me more and more money, and I'll take it. But I appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much. Remember, a $5 or higher super chat will get you on the wheel for the Curtis Martin signed mini helmet. Please like the video, subscribe if you are new. We are approaching that hour mark, so we will take a couple more. I got to catch up on some of these chats. There you go, Philly. It's your fiance. Your short queen. There you go. Everybody needs one of those in their life. Jets Johnny, bro. I had to take several nature walks around Tampa Bay before the start of the football game. And then we melted into a big green jet fuel puddle in Raymond James Stadium. That was fun. That was an experience for sure. Bro, I wish, Jets Johnny. If I had an 850 credit score, man, I'd be financing everything. No, we're in good standings with Capital One. They appreciate it, man. JT, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I do discount myself, and it's probably just the longevity of it, right? Like the O'Learys and the Asmans of the world have been doing it for a while. And technically, I've been podcasting since 2020. Started with Jet Nation, obviously. But yeah, it's just a matter of time. But just to even be in the conversation with some of these guys and, get an opportunity now to make content with Jets Roundtable starting next week, hopefully, once Richie gets back from vacation. Happy birthday to Richie. Our guy, everybody go shout out Jets Media on Twitter or Instagram. It is his birthday today. But yeah, man, I'm excited and I appreciate that. I will always say somebody's going to do their job better in this space than I will. But that doesn't mean I'm selling myself short, right? I think I know what I can bring from a content perspective. And it's different. Everybody's different, right? You have the entertainment side, the analysis side, the film review side. There's so many different aspects, and you break it all down, you make your lists, and different people are going to be at the top of different lists, which is awesome. Coach Glick in the chat, what's up, man? I appreciate you. He says, DT, your content is fantastic. Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Every single person, even the ones that say, constructive criticism, right? Like I know my guy Jimmy is going to be in the chat or in the comments after this and tell me that maybe there was enough voice inflection in this episode and I showed a little bit of emotion. So I appreciate everybody for the kind words and the constructive criticism. I take it all, and I certainly try to improve the performance show over show. With that, we are at the hour and 5 minute mark. I certainly appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe if you're new. I did put out a mock reaction to ESPN's Matt Miller and his 7-round mock where he made all 9 picks for the New York Jets. I dropped that yesterday on the channel, pre-recorded. So go ahead and check that out for me. Hit the like button one more time. Subscribe if you're new. DT signing out, saying everybody enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Let's go Jets.